The rain-slicked streets of Manhattan gleamed under the streetlights. But Ethan Caldwell barely noticed. His world had shattered in a single moment. His 6-month-old daughter, Lily, was gone. Stolen from her stroller in a crowded park. Vanished in the blink of an eye while he turned to answer a call. Ethan, a 38-year-old billionaire CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, was a man who controlled everything: markets, deals, destinies. But now, sprinting through the chaos of Times Square, his heart pounded with a fear he'd never known. The police were searching. His security team was scouring the city. But every second felt like a lifetime. He pushed through the crowd, his tailored suit soaked, his phone buzzing with updates that led nowhere. Then, in a narrow alley behind a neon-lit diner, he saw it, a young man, no older than 25, sitting on a crate, cradling Lily in his arms. She was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling against the stranger's worn jacket. Ethan froze, his breath catching. The man's face was soft, almost reverent, as he hummed a lullaby, oblivious to the world around him. "Hey." Ethan's voice cracked like thunder. The young man's head snapped up, eyes wide with a mix of guilt and defiance. He stood slowly, clutching Lily protectively. "Don't come closer," he said, his voice low but steady. "She's safe. I found her." Ethan's fists clenched, torn between rage and relief. "Found her? She was stolen. Who the hell are you?" His security team was minutes away, but every instinct screamed to act now. Yet something in the stranger's eyes pain. Sincerity held him back. "I'm nobody," the young man said, his voice trembling. "Name's Jamie. I saw a woman ditch her in the park. I couldn't just leave her." He shifted, revealing a battered backpack and scuffed boots. Homeless, Ethan realized, his mind racing. But why was this stranger holding his daughter like she was his own? Ethan stepped closer, his voice softening. "Give her to me. Now." Jamie hesitated, then carefully handed Lily over. Her warmth against Ethan's chest was a lifeline. But questions burned. Why had Jamie stayed? Why hadn't he called the police? And why did his haunted eyes linger in Ethan's mind? Over the next few hours, at the police station, the story unraveled. Jamie Harper, 24, had been living on the streets for 2 years. He'd seen a woman abandon Lily's stroller near a bench, her cries ignored by passers-by. Jamie, who knew the pain of being discarded, couldn't walk away. He'd taken her to keep her safe, planning to find help but unsure who to trust in a city that had chewed him up and spit him out. Ethan watched Jamie across the station, his lean frame slouched in a chair, answering questions with quiet honesty. The police confirmed his sterno criminal record. No motive beyond instinct. Ethan should have felt gratitude and nothing more. But as Jamie glanced at him, their eyes locking for a fleeting moment, Ethan felt something else, a pull, inexplicable and unsettling. He should have walked away. Lily was safe, the nightmare over. Yet, as Jamie stood to leave, Ethan called out, "Wait." Jamie turned, wary. Ethan didn't know why he spoke, but the words came anyway. "You saved her. Let me help you." Jamie's laugh was bitter. "Help? You don't even know me." "I know you didn't have to care," Ethan said, "but you did." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Lily cooed in her crib, but his mind was on Jamie's guarded eyes, his gentle hands. Ethan had built an empire on calculated risks. But this was different. This was personal. He found himself searching for Jamie the next day, tracking him to a shelter in Brooklyn. When he saw Jamie again, sitting on a cot with a book in hand, Ethan's heart skipped. "I meant it," Ethan said, standing in the shelter's dim light. Let me help you get back on your feet. Jamie's jaw tightened, pride warring with desperation. Why do you care? He asked. Ethan didn't have an answer, not yet. But as they talked, Jamie's story spilled out. He'd grown up in a small Ohio town, kicked out at 18 for being gay. He'd come to New York with dreams of art school, only to spiral into poverty after a string of bad luck. His resilience, his quiet strength, struck Ethan deeply. Over the next week, Ethan offered Jamie a job at Caldwell Enterprises, nothing glamorous, just to start in the mailroom. Jamie accepted, reluctantly, but his presence began to shift something in Ethan. Meetings felt less important when Jamie dropped off packages, his shy smile lingering in Ethan's mind. Lily, too, seemed to light up when Jamie was near, her giggles filling the penthouse during his visits. But shadows loomed. Ethan's board of directors whispered about his distraction, and Jamie's past resurfaced in ways neither expected. A private investigator, hired by a rival, dug up Jamie's history, twisting it into a scandal to undermine Ethan's leadership. Rumors spread. The CEO was too close to a street kid. Ethan's carefully controlled world began to crack. One evening, in Ethan's penthouse, Jamie confronted him. This job, whatever this ice, it's putting you at risk. I'm not worth it. His voice broke, raw with self-doubt. Ethan stepped closer, heart pounding. You're wrong, he said. You're worth more than you know. Their eyes locked, the air thick with unspoken truths. Ethan, who'd never questioned his attraction to women, felt a pull toward Jamie he couldn't explain. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper, something that scared him as much as it thrilled him. The city hummed outside Ethan's penthouse, but inside, the silence was deafening. Jamie stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette sharp against the Manhattan skyline. Ethan's words, "You're worth more than you know," hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to unpack. Jamie turned, his hazel eyes catching the dim light. You don't get it, Ethan. People like me, we don't fit in your world. His voice was soft, but laced with years of rejection. Ethan wanted to argue, to say Jamie belonged anywhere he damn well pleased. But the weight of his own privilege stopped him. He'd never had to fight to be seen. Instead, he crossed the room, stopping just short of Jamie. Then let me help you build a place in it. His voice was steady, but his pulse raced. Jamie's gaze flickered, a mix of hope and fear. For a moment, they stood there, the space between them electric. Then Jamie stepped back, breaking the spell. I need to go, he muttered, grabbing his jacket. Ethan didn't stop him, but as the door clicked shut, he felt a void he hadn't noticed before, a longing that went beyond gratitude or guilt. He poured a whiskey, staring at Lily's empty crib. His daughter was with her nanny for the night, but her absence only sharpened the ache. What was he doing? Chasing after a stranger who'd upended his life. The next day at Caldwell Enterprises, Ethan buried himself in work. But Jamie's presence in the mailroom was a constant pull. He caught glimpses of him sorting packages, laughing with a coworker, his sleeves rolled up to reveal lean forearms dusted with freckles. Ethan forced himself to focus, but the board's whispers were growing louder. His rival, Victor Hayes, was circling, using Jamie's past to paint Ethan as reckless. Victor cornered him at a gala that evening, his smile sharp as a blade. Mixing with strays. Caldwell. Bad for business. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his cool. Careful, Victor. Jealousy doesn't suit you. But the jab stung. Victor's investigator had leaked Jamie's story to the press, a homeless drifter tied to the CEO's daughter. The headlines were brutal. Ethan found Jamie the next morning at a coffee shop near the office. his face pale as he scrolled through his phone. "They're calling me a con artist," Jamie said, his voice hollow, "saying I planned this, that I'm using you." Ethan slid into the booth across from him, ignoring the curious stares. "Let them talk. I know the truth." Jamie's eyes met his, raw and searching. "Do you?" "Because I'm starting to wonder if I'm just a project to you. A way to feel good about yourself." The words cut deep, but Ethan leaned forward. "You're not a project, Jamie. You're—" he faltered, unsure how to name the feeling tightening his chest. Jamie looked away, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I came out at 18. My family threw me out like trash. I've been running ever since. You don't know what it's like to be nobody." Ethan reached out, his hand brushing Jamie's. "You're not nobody. Not to me. Not to Lily." The touch lingered, a quiet promise. Jamie didn't pull away, but his voice was barely a whisper. "You're risking everything." "Why?" Ethan didn't answer, couldn't. Not yet. But as they sat there, the world fading around them, he knew he was falling into something he'd never expected. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened. Jamie moved into a small apartment Ethan arranged, insisting he'd pay rent once he saved enough. He threw himself into his job, proving his worth with every task. Ethan, meanwhile, found excuses to be near him: meetings, coffee runs, late-night talks about everything from art to loss. Jamie's passion for sketching fascinated Ethan. His drawings, raw and vivid, revealed a soul that had seen too much but still dreamed. But the world wasn't kind. Victor's smear campaign escalated, and Ethan's board demanded answers. "This kid's a liability," one director snapped. Ethan stood firm. "He saved my daughter. He's an asset." But doubt crept in. Was he defending Jamie for the right reasons? Or was he chasing a feeling he didn't fully understand? One night, after a tense board meeting, Ethan found Jamie at the office, sketching in the empty break room. The drawing was of Lily, her tiny face captured with heartbreaking care. "You're good," Ethan said, leaning against the doorframe. Jamie blushed, closing the sketchbook. "It's nothing." "It's everything," Ethan said, stepping closer. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, Ethan let himself feel the truth. He was falling for Jamie, not just as a savior or a friend, but as a man. The realization was terrifying, exhilarating. He'd never questioned his identity, but Jamie was rewriting everything. Before he could speak, Jamie's phone buzzed. His face fell as he read the message. "It's my old foster brother," he said, voice tight. "He's in trouble. Needs my help." Ethan saw the fear in his eyes, fear of being pulled back into a past he'd fought to escape. "Let me help you," Ethan said, his hand on Jamie's shoulder. "We'll figure it out. Together." The message on Jamie's phone was a gut punch. His foster brother, Marcus, was in deep with a loan shark in the Bronx. "He's got till Friday to pay, or they'll hurt him," Jamie said, his voice shaking as he stood in the break room. Ethan's hand lingered on his shoulder, grounding him. But the fear in Jamie's eyes was a storm Ethan couldn't calm. "We'll handle it," Ethan said, his CEO instincts kicking in. "How much does he owe?" Jamie hesitated, then muttered, 10 grand. To Ethan, it was pocket change. But to Jamie, it was a mountain. "I'll pay it," Ethan said. Jamie's jaw tightened. "No, I'm not your charity case." Ethan wanted to argue, but the fire in Jamie's eyes stopped him. This wasn't about money, it was about pride. About Jamie proving he could stand on his own. "Fine," Ethan said, "but I'm coming with you." Jamie stared, then nodded, a silent agreement that they were in this together. The next evening, They drove to a rundown bar in the Bronx, the kind of place where shadows clung to every corner. Ethan, in a plain jacket to blend in, felt out of place beside Jamie, who navigated the streets with a tense familiarity. Inside, Marcus was waiting, a wiry man in his late 20s, his eyes darting nervously. "Jamie, you shouldn't be here," he said, glancing at Ethan. "Who's this?" "Someone who cares," Jamie said sharply. The lone shark, a hulking man named Rico, emerged from the back, his smile cold. "Money," he said, holding out a hand. Jamie pulled an envelope from his jacket, every cent he'd saved from his new job, plus a loan he'd scraped together. It wasn't enough. Rico's laugh was cruel. "You're short, kid." Ethan stepped forward, his voice low. "I'll cover the rest." He pulled out his phone, ready to transfer the funds. But Rico's eyes narrowed. "Fancy guy? Huh? This ain't your world." Before Ethan could respond, Jamie grabbed his arm. "Don't. Let me handle it." The tension exploded when Rico's men grabbed Marcus, a knife glinting in the dim light. Jamie lunged, shoving one of them back. But Ethan was faster. He tackled Rico, years of pent-up anger fueling his strength. The bar erupted in chaos shouts, breaking glass, Jamie pulling Marcus free. By the time the police arrived, Rico was pinned, and Ethan's knuckles were bloody. Outside, under the flickering streetlights, Jamie was furious. "You could have gotten killed," he yelled, his breath visible in the cold. Ethan, bruised but steady, met his gaze. "So could you. I wasn't leaving you alone." Jamie's anger faltered, replaced by something softer. For a moment, they stood close, the world shrinking to just them. Back in Manhattan, Ethan's world was unraveling. The fight made the news, twisted into another scandal. Billionaire CEO in bar brawl. Victor Hayes pounced, leaking photos of Ethan and Jamie together, fueling rumors about their relationship. The board called an emergency meeting, demanding Ethan step back. "You're jeopard to the boy," one director said, "but it's clouding your judgment." Ethan's patience snapped. "His name is Jamie, and he's not a boy. He's the reason my daughter's alive." But the board wasn't swayed. Victor's influence was growing, and Ethan's leadership was on the line. He needed to focus. But all he could think about was Jamie's courage, his stubborn pride, the way his touch lingered in Ethan's mind. Jamie, meanwhile, was wrestling with his own demons. Marcus's debt was paid, but the encounter had dragged him back to a past he'd tried to bury. He confided in Ethan one night, sitting on the penthouse balcony. "I thought I'd escape that life," he said, staring at the city below. "But it keeps pulling me back." Ethan sat beside him, their shoulders brushing. "You're not that kid anymore. You're building something new." Jamie looked at him, his eyes raw. "What if I don't belong here either? With you?" The question hung heavy, and Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to say Jamie belonged with him, in every way, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he took Jamie's hand, their fingers intertwining. "You belong wherever you choose to be," Ethan said. Jamie's breath hitched, and for a moment, they were just two men, lost in each other. But the moment was fleeting. Jamie pulled away, standing. "I need time," he said, his voice barely audible. It's too much." Ethan watched him leave, the city's hum filling the silence. He'd always been in control, but Jamie was a variable he couldn't predict. And yet, he couldn't let go. Not of the man who'd saved his daughter, who'd cracked open his carefully guarded heart. The next day, Jamie didn't show up for work. Ethan's calls went unanswered, and panic set in. He tracked down Marcus, who admitted Jamie had left to clear his head. "He's scared," Marcus said. "He thinks he'll ruin you." Ethan's chest tightened. He'd spent his life building walls. But Jamie had slipped through them. Now, he had to find him before the world, or their own fears, tore them apart. Ethan scoured the city for Jamie, his mind a tangle of worry and longing. He checked shelters, coffee shops, even the alley where they'd first met. Nothing. The absence was a weight, heavier than the boardroom battles or Victor's relentless attacks. Lily's laughter, once a balm, now reminded him of Jamie's gentle hands cradling her. 3 days passed with no word. Ethan's security team tracked Jamie's phone to a bus station in Newark. But the trail went cold. He was slipping away, and Ethan couldn't shake the fear that he'd pushed too hard, asked too much. He sat in his office late at night, staring at a sketch Jamie had left behind, a portrait of Lily, her eyes bright with trust. Ethan's fingers traced the lines, his heart aching. Meanwhile, Jamie was in a small motel in upstate New York, the kind with flickering neon signs and threadbare sheets. He'd run, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Ethan's world penthouse suites, private jets, was a universe away from his own. Every touch, every look, had felt like a promise he couldn't keep. He was falling for Ethan, and it terrified him. What right did he have to love a man like that? He spent his days sketching, filling pages with Ethan's face, his sharp jaw, his unguarded smile. But the motel's thin walls couldn't block out his doubts. He'd seen the headlines, the board's threats. He was a liability, a nobody dragging Ethan down. Yet, every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ethan's hand on his, heard his voice. "You belong wherever you choose to be." Back in Manhattan, Ethan faced a reckoning. Victor had called a vote to oust him as CEO, citing instability and poor judgment. The boardroom was a battlefield, every glance a weapon. Ethan stood tall, his voice steady. "You want to judge me? Fine. But I built this company, and I'll fight for it and for the people who matter to me." The vote was close, but Ethan held his position. Barely. Victor's smirk promised more trouble, but Ethan didn't care. He was done playing defense. He hired a new investigator, not to dig into Jamie's past, but to find him. The search led to the motel, a grainy security photo showing Jamie checking in, his face tired but resolute. Ethan drove through the night, the road blurring as he rehearsed what he'd say. When he knocked on Jamie's door at dawn, the silence was agonizing. Then the door opened, and there he was, Jamie, eyes red, sketchbook clutched to his chest. "You shouldn't be here," Jamie said, but his voice cracked. "I had to be," Ethan replied, stepping inside. The room was small, cluttered with drawings, each one a piece of Jamie's heart. Ethan's breath caught as he saw his own face among them. "You ran," he said softly. "Why?" Jamie looked away, his hands trembling. "Because I'm falling for you, and it's going to ruin us both." The confession hung between them, raw and unfiltered. Ethan closed the distance, his hand cupping Jamie's face. "Then let it ruin us. I don't care." Their lips met, tentative at first, then desperate, years of loneliness pouring into the kiss. It was messy, imperfect, but it was theirs. When they pulled apart, Jamie's eyes were wet. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I've never had anything to lose before." "You're not losing me," Ethan said, his voice fierce. "Not now. Not ever." They stayed there, wrapped in each other, as the morning light crept through the window. For the first time, Ethan felt whole, not as a CEO, not as a father, but as a man who'd found something worth fighting for. But the world wasn't done with them. Victor's next move came swiftly, a lawsuit claiming Ethan had misused company funds to support a personal agenda. The accusations were flimsy, but the timing was brutal, hitting just as Ethan and Jamie returned to the city. The press swarmed, cameras flashing as they stepped out of Ethan's car together. Jamie froze, his hand tightening in Ethan's. "They'll destroy you," he whispered. "Let them try," Ethan said, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd always been a private man, his personal life locked away. Now, with Jamie by his side, he was exposed, vulnerable in a way he'd never been. He hired a top lawyer, but the battle was more than legal, it was personal, a test of who he was willing to be. That night, in the penthouse, Jamie sat with Lily, reading her a story. Ethan watched from the doorway, his heart swelling. This was what mattered: Jamie's quiet strength, Lily's trust. But as Jamie met his gaze, Ethan saw the fear lingering. "What if we're not enough?" Jamie asked. Ethan knelt beside him, taking his hand. "You are. You both are." But even as he spoke, he knew the fight was far from over. Victor was relentless, and the world was watching, waiting for them to fall. The lawsuit hit like a tidal wave, flooding Ethan's life with chaos. Victor's claims were plastered across every major outlet, accusing Ethan of funneling company money to prop up a questionable relationship. The headlines were vicious, painting Jamie as a gold digger and Ethan as a fool. Ethan's lawyer, Sarah, was blunt. "This is a smear campaign, but it's gaining traction. We need to fight dirty or you're done." Ethan sat in his office, the city skyline mocking his unraveling empire. He'd built Caldwell Enterprises from nothing, but now it felt like a house of cards. Jamie, meanwhile, was crumbling under the scrutiny. He'd stopped sketching, his hands restless as he paced the penthouse. "I should leave," he said one night, his voice hollow. "This is my fault." Ethan grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet his eyes. "You're not going anywhere. We're in this together." Jamie's lips trembled, but he nodded, leaning into Ethan's touch. It was a fragile moment, their love a flicker in the storm. Ethan knew he had to act not just for his company, but for the family he was starting to see in Jamie and Lily. Sarah dug into Victor's past, uncovering shady deals and hidden accounts. It wasn't enough to clear Ethan's name, but it was a start. Ethan took the offensive, calling a press conference. Standing before a sea of cameras, he didn't deny his relationship with Jamie. "I'm a father, a CEO, and a man who's learning what love means," he said, his voice steady. "Jamie Harper saved my daughter's life. He's not a Scandal's a hero." The room erupted, questions flying, but Ethan held his ground. Jamie watched from the sidelines, his eyes wide with awe and fear. Afterward, in a quiet corner, he grabbed Ethan's hand. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Ethan smiled, brushing a thumb across Jamie's cheek. "Yeah, I did." The press conference shifted the narrative, but not enough. Victor doubled down, leaking private emails between Ethan and Jamie, innocent, but twisted to look damning. The board scheduled another vote, this time with real weight. Ethan's allies were wavering, and his empire was slipping. Jamie, desperate to help, reached out to Marcus, who'd cleaned up since the loan shark mess. "You know people," Jamie said. "Anyone who can dig up dirt on Victor." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. He connected Jamie with an old friend, a hacker named Lila, who worked in the shadows. Lila uncovered evidence of Victor's embezzlement, millions siphoned from a rival firm years ago. It was a bombshell, but using it meant playing Victor's game. Ethan was torn. This could ruin him, he said, staring at the files Lila sent. Jamie nodded, his jaw tight. He's trying to ruin you. Fight back. Ethan saw the fire in Jamie's eyes. The same strength that had saved Lily. He made the call, handing the evidence to Sarah. Do it. The fallout was swift. Victor's empire crumbled as the press turned on him, his allies abandoning ship. But Ethan felt no triumph. The board vote loomed, and public opinion was still split. He and Jamie spent sleepless nights strategizing, their bond growing stronger in the chaos. One evening, as Lily slept, Jamie pulled Ethan close. I never thought I'd have this, he whispered. A home. You. Ethan kissed him, slow and deep, pouring everything into it: fear, hope, love. You're my home, he said. But the words felt fragile against the weight of what was coming. The vote was in 2 days, and Ethan's future hung in the balance. The night before the vote, Jamie surprised Ethan with a gift, a sketch of the three of them: Ethan, Jamie, and Lily laughing in a park. This is what we're fighting for, Jamie said, his voice steady. Ethan's throat tightened. He'd spent years chasing success, but this was what mattered. The boardroom was a crucible. Victor, disgraced but defiant, attended as a shareholder, his eyes glinting with malice. Ethan presented his case, his leadership, his vision, his commitment to the company. He didn't mention Jamie, but his presence was felt in every word. The vote was agonizingly close, but Ethan won by a single voice. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. Victor cornered him after, his voice low. You think you've won. This city never forgets. Ethan met his gaze, unflinching. I'm not afraid of you, or this city. Victor walked away, but his words lingered, a reminder that the fight was never truly over. That night, Ethan and Jamie celebrated quietly, Lily asleep between them. The victory was sweet, but the scars remained. Ethan knew his world had changed not just because of the scandal, but because of Jamie. He was no longer the man who'd controlled everything. He was better. The victory in the boardroom felt like a reprieve, but Ethan knew the war wasn't over. The city's pulse thrummed with judgment, and the headlines still lingered, dissecting his relationship with Jamie. Yet, in the quiet moments like when Jamie sang softly to Lily, or when their hands brushed over dinner and found a peace he'd never known, Jamie, too, was changing. The job at Caldwell Enterprises had given him stability, but Ethan's love gave him courage. He enrolled in night classes for art, his sketches filling their apartment with dreams of a future he'd once thought impossible. But the weight of the past clung to him. Late at night, he'd wake from nightmares of his family's rejection, his body trembling until Ethan pulled him close. One afternoon, as they walked through Central Park with Lily, a photographer snapped their picture. The image: Ethan laughing, Jamie pushing the stroller, Lily waving a tiny hand, went viral. But not for the reasons Ethan feared. People saw love, not scandal. Comments flooded in. This is what family looks like. They're beautiful. For the first time, Jamie felt seen, not as a drifter, but as a man worthy of love. The tide was turning, but not everyone was swayed. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, a formidable woman who'd raised him alone after his father's death, flew in from Boston. She'd heard the rumors and seen the photos. Over dinner at the penthouse, her gaze was sharp. Ethan, you've built an empire. Is this boy worth risking it all? Ethan's jaw tightened. His name is Jamie, Mom. And yes, he is. Jamie, sitting across the table, looked down, his fingers twisting a napkin. Eleanor softened slightly, studying him. You saved my granddaughter, she said finally. But this life fight's not easy. Jamie met her eyes, his voice steady. I know. But I'm not running anymore. Eleanor didn't approve. Not fully. But she didn't fight it either. As she left, she hugged Ethan tightly. Be careful, she whispered. Ethan nodded. But his heart was with Jamie, who was reading to Lily in the next room. He knew careful wasn't enough, wanted fearless. The next challenge came unexpectedly. Jamie's art teacher, impressed by his work, submitted one of his sketches to a local gallery. It was accepted for a showcase, a chance for Jamie to step into the spotlight. Ethan was thrilled, but Jamie was nervous. What if they hate it? He asked, staring at the sketch, a raw, vibrant portrait of a homeless man, his eyes full of stories. They won't, Ethan said, pulling him close. It's you. It's real. The night of the showcase, Jamie stood in the gallery, his heart pounding as strangers admired his work. Ethan was by his side, beaming with pride. When a buyer offered $5,000 for the sketch, Jamie's eyes widened. That's mine, he whispered. Ethan squeezed his hand. It's just the start. But success brought new pressures. The gallery wanted more of Jamie's work, and the demands clashed with his job at Caldwell Enterprises. Ethan offered to support him so he could focus on art. But Jamie bristled. I need to do this myself, he said, his voice firm. Ethan understood, but the distance between them grew small, but noticeable. Jamie was pulling away, not out of doubt, but to prove he could stand alone. One night, after a long day, they argued. I don't want your money, Jamie snapped, his eyes flashing. I want to be enough on my own. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. You are enough. But you don't have to do it alone. The tension broke when Jamie kissed him, fierce and desperate, as if to anchor himself. They fell into bed, their love a refuge from the world's noise. But the world wouldn't stay quiet. Victor, though disgraced, hadn't vanished. He sent Ethan an anonymous message. You think you're untouchable. Watch your back. Ethan showed it to Sarah, who tightened his security. Jamie, meanwhile, was haunted by his own fears. He'd gained so much love. A home, a future, but the thought of losing it was paralyzing. One evening, as they sat with Lily, Jamie spoke softly. I used to think I didn't deserve this. You, her, any of it. Ethan took his hand, his voice steady. You deserve everything, and I'll fight to keep Thesis. Jamie's eyes shone with tears, but he nodded, a silent vow to fight too. The gallery showcase was a turning point, but it was only the beginning. Jamie's art was gaining attention, and Ethan's company was stabilizing. But the shadows of their pasts and Victor's threats loomed large. They were building something beautiful, but it was fragile, and they both knew it. The gallery's success lit a spark in Jamie, but it also cast a spotlight on their lives. Invitations poured in, interviews, art shows, even a feature in a major magazine. Jamie was hesitant, wary of the attention, but Ethan encouraged him. This is your moment, he said, his eyes bright with pride. Show them who you are. Jamie's next piece was bolder, a series of sketches depicting his journey from the streets to now, each one raw and unflinching. The centerpiece was a portrait of Ethan and Lily, their faces glowing with love. When it debuted, the gallery was packed, and Jamie's vulnerability won hearts. Critics called it a testament to resilience, and offers rolled in. Jamie was no longer just the man who'd saved Lily, he was an artist, a voice. But the spotlight had a dark side. Victor's anonymous threats escalated. Cryptic notes left at Ethan's office. You can't hide forever. Ethan's security team traced them. But Victor was slippery, always one step ahead. Jamie, meanwhile, faced his own ghosts. A reporter dug up his past, publishing a piece about his time on the streets. It was sympathetic, but it stung, exposing wounds he'd tried to heal. One night, Jamie broke down, his sketchbook falling to the floor. "They'll never let me forget," he said, his voice raw. Ethan knelt beside him, pulling him close. "They don't define you. We do." Jamie clung to him, their love a shield against the world's cruelty. But the fear lingered. Victor's threats, the press, the weight of their different worlds. Ethan doubled down on security, hiring a private firm to protect Jamie and Lily. He also reached out to his mother, asking for her support. Eleanor, softened by Jamie's art, agreed to meet them again. Over lunch, she studied Jamie, her eyes warmer than before. "You've got fire," she said. "Don't let this city snuff it out." Jamie smiled, tentative but genuine. It wasn't approval, but it was a start. As Jamie's career soared, so did the pressure. He juggled classes, shows, and his job, his time with Ethan and Lily shrinking. Ethan felt the strain, missing the quiet nights when it was just them. One evening, he planned a surprise, a weekend getaway to a cabin in the Catskills. No press, no threats, just them. The cabin was a haven, surrounded by pines and silence. They cooked together, laughed as Lily smeared mashed potatoes on Jamie's face, and made love by the fire. For 2 days, the world faded, and it was just them, Ethan, Jamie, and Lily, a family. On the last night, Jamie gave Ethan a sketch, the three of them under the stars, their hands linked. "This is us," he said, his voice thick. Ethan's heart swelled. "Forever," he promised. But reality crashed back in Manhattan. Victor's latest move was a leaked audio, manipulated to sound like Ethan confessing to misusing funds. The board, still shaky, called for an investigation. Ethan's lawyer fought back, proving the audio was fake. But the damage was done. Public trust wavered, and Ethan's stock plummeted. Jamie, furious, wanted to confront Victor himself. Ethan stopped him. "He's desperate," Ethan said. "Let him hang himself." But Jamie's anger was a fire, fueled by years of being pushed down. He went to Lila, the hacker, and asked for more dirt. She delivered, proof Victor had bribed a board member to sway the vote against Ethan. It was enough to end him. Ethan hesitated. Using the evidence would mean sinking to Victor's level. But losing everything wasn't an option. He and Jamie debated late into the night, Lily asleep in her crib. "I want to protect you," Jamie said, his eyes fierce. "Like you've protected me." Ethan nodded. The decision made. They'd fight, not just for themselves, but for the life they were building. The evidence went public, and Victor's empire collapsed. Arrested for fraud, he was gone, but the scars remained. Ethan's company stabilized, but the toll was heavy. He and Jamie were stronger, but the world's judgment lingered. They faced it together, hand in hand, determined to carve out their place. As winter settled over the city, Jamie's art show sold out, and Ethan's leadership was reaffirmed. They stood on the penthouse balcony, Lily in Ethan's arms, Jamie's hand in his. The city glittered below, a reminder of what they'd overcome. "We're enough," Jamie whispered. Ethan kissed him, soft and sure. More than enough. Winter blanketed Manhattan, but in Ethan's penthouse, warmth filled every corner. Jamie's sketches adorned the walls. Lily's toys scattered across the floor, and their laughter mingled with the crackle of the fireplace. They'd fought through scandals, threats, and doubts, emerging not just intact, but whole. Yet, Ethan knew their story wasn't finished love like theirs demanded constant courage. Victor's arrest had quieted the storm, But the city's eyes lingered. Ethan and Jamie were no longer just a CEO and an artist. They were a symbol, their love dissected in blogs and talk shows. Some called them inspiring, others a controversy. Jamie struggled with the attention, but Ethan anchored him. "We don't owe them our story," Ethan said one night, his arms around Jamie. "We live it for us." Jamie nodded, but his art spoke louder. His next series, unveiled in spring, was his boldest yet, portraits of queer love, resilience, and family, with Ethan and Lily at its heart. The opening night was electric. The gallery packed with supporters. Ethan stood beside Jamie, Lily on his hip, as critics praised the work's raw honesty. A young man approached Jamie, tears in his eyes. "Your art saved me," he said. "It made me feel seen." Jamie's breath caught, and Ethan squeezed his hand, pride swelling. The moment was a turning point. Jamie's art became a beacon for others, and he started mentoring young queer artists, giving them the support he'd never had. Ethan, inspired, launched a foundation through Caldwell Enterprises, funding shelters and art programs for homeless youth. They named it Lily's Light, a nod to the daughter who'd brought them together. But life wasn't a fairy tale. Ethan's mother remained distant, her approval cautious. Jamie's past still surfaced, old wounds reopened by a letter from his estranged family, begging for money now that he was famous. He tore it up, but the pain lingered. Ethan held him through the nights when memories clawed at him, whispering, "You're enough. You've always been enough." One evening, as they walked through Central Park, Lily toddling between them, Jamie stopped. "I want to stay," he said, his voice steady. "Forever. With you. With her." Ethan's heart raced. He'd been carrying a ring for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Under the cherry blossoms, he knelt, Lily giggling as he pulled out the box. "Jamie Harper, will you marry me?" Jamie's eyes widened, tears spilling. "Yes," he whispered, pulling Ethan up for a kiss that tasted of promises. The park seemed to hold its breath, the world theirs for a moment. Lily clapped, her tiny hands a joyful drumbeat. Their wedding was small, intimate, in a rooftop garden overlooking the city. Lily was the flower girl, tossing petals with glee. Eleanor was there, her smile tentative but real. Marcus, now sober and working, gave a toast that left everyone in tears. "To love," he said, "that finds you when you least expect it." The years that followed were a tapestry of joy and struggle. Jamie's art flourished, his name synonymous with hope. Ethan stepped back from CEO, focusing on the foundation and his family. They adopted a second child, a boy named Noah, whose laughter filled their home. The city watched, sometimes with judgment, but mostly with awe. Their love, once a scandal, became a legacy. One night, as they sat with their children, Jamie sketched quietly, his hand steady. Ethan watched, his heart full. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Jamie smiled, showing him a sketch of their family, vibrant and alive. "Us," he said. "Always us." Their story wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. A billionaire and a stranger, brought together by a baby's cry, had rewritten their lives. They'd faced a world that tried to tear them apart and emerged stronger. Not because they were fearless, but because they chose love over fear. And in that choice, they found a truth that changed them forever. Love, in all its forms, was worth every fight.